Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into the secret life of the one thing that makes up, well, literally everything. Everything you see, everything you touch, even the air you're breathing right now. We're talking about matter.
So think about it for a second. What are you, the screen you're looking at, and the air filling the space between you, what do they all have in common? It sounds like a simple question, right? But the answer is actually pretty profound.
And the answer is, they're all matter. Yep. It's the fundamental stuff that our entire reality is built from. From the farthest star in a distant galaxy, all the way down to the device in your hands.
So what is this stuff, really? Let's go on a little journey, from the things we see every day down into the invisible world that makes it all tick.
You know, the scientific definition is actually beautifully simple. For something to count as matter, it just has to do two things. First, it needs to have mass. That's just the amount of stuff in it. And second, it has to take up space, what we call volume. So a giant rock, a fluffy cloud, a tiny drop of water, you guessed it, it's all matter.
But here's where it gets really cool. Matter isn't just one solid, continuous block. Oh no, if you could zoom in, and I mean way, way in, you'd see that it's made of countless tiny little particles. And these particles, they live by a very specific set of rules.
All right, rule number one. The particles that make up everything are not squished together perfectly tight. No matter how solid something feels, there are always these teeny tiny invisible gaps between its particles.
And you've actually seen this happen. Think about when you stir sugar into a glass of water. Why doesn't the water level go up? Well, it's because those little sugar particles aren't pushing the water up. Instead, they're cleverly slipping into the empty spaces that were already there between the water particles. It's kind of like finding empty parking spots in a really crowded lot.
So, what's rule number two? These particles are never, ever still. I mean it. They are in a constant state of motion. They're vibrating, they're jiggling, they're buzzing around all the time. This constant movement is what scientists call kinetic energy. And the hotter the particles get, the more energy they have, and the faster they move. It's the reason the delicious smell of a hot pizza can travel all the way across the house, right? But you have to get pretty close to smell a cold slice. Those aroma particles from the hot food are just moving so fast that they spread through the air, mixing with the air particles along the way. That whole process, that's diffusion in action.
Okay, so if all these particles have space between them and they're always moving, what stops everything from just flying apart? Well, that leads us right to rule number three. There's a force of attraction that pulls these particles toward each other, keeping them together. A really great way to picture this is to think of a chain of dancers. Each dancer is a particle. Now, if they lock arms really tightly, that chain is super strong, right? But if they're just holding hands, it's a bit weaker. And if they're only touching fingertips, well, that chain is going to be pretty easy to break. The strength of this attraction is different for every type of matter.
Now, this is where it all comes together. Those three rules we just talked about, space, motion, and attraction, they're like the secret recipe behind the three personalities or states of matter that we know so well: solids, liquids, and gases.
So how these rules play out totally determines the state of matter. In a solid, that particle attraction is super strong, locking them in place. That's why a rock has its own shape. In a liquid, the attraction is a little weaker, so the particles can slide past each other, which is why water takes the shape of its glass. And in a gas, the attraction is almost non-existent. The particles just fly around freely, filling up any space they're in.
Here's another way to think about it. Solids are like a perfectly behaved audience, sitting in their fixed seats. Liquids? They're more like people mingling at a party. They can move around and slide past each other, but they're all staying in the same room. And gases, well, gases are like a wild mosh pit, with particles bouncing off the walls and each other at high speed.
So what happens when you introduce a little energy into this whole system? Well, matter isn't stuck in one state forever. It can transform.
Let's take the classic example, water. You start with ice, which is a solid. You add some heat. That gives the particles more of that kinetic energy, and they start vibrating faster and faster and faster until, bam, they break free from their fixed spots and start to flow. The ice melts into water. If you keep adding heat, those particles move so fast that they escape the liquid completely and fly off as steam, a gas.
But here's something really weird that happens during that process. If you put a thermometer in a cup of melting ice, it stays at exactly 0 degrees Celsius until every last bit of ice is gone. So, if the temperature isn't rising, where's all that heat energy going?
This mystery is solved by something called latent heat.
It turns out the energy isn't making the particles move faster, which is what would raise the temperature. No, instead, that energy is being used for a different job. It's doing the hard work of breaking the bonds that hold the particles together. It's the hidden energy needed to change from one state to another.
And you know, it's not just about temperature. Pressure plays a huge part too. If you apply enough pressure, you can actually force gas particles so close together that they turn into a liquid. A fantastic example of this is solid carbon dioxide, or dry ice. Under normal pressure, it goes straight from a solid to a gas, which is a process called sublimation. Super cool.
Okay, let's bring all this amazing particle science back to something you feel every single day: evaporation.
Evaporation is basically just a liquid turning into a gas without having to reach its boiling point. And it happens a lot faster if you increase the surface area. That's why you spread out wet laundry to dry. It also speeds up when it's hotter or windier or when the air is less humid. It's all about giving those particles right at the surface enough energy to break free and escape into the air.
Which brings us to one final, really practical question that all this particle science answers perfectly. Why do we wear cotton clothes when it's hot in the summer?
The answer is all about something called evaporative cooling. When you sweat, that liquid on your skin needs energy so it can evaporate. And where does it get that energy? It literally pulls heat directly from your body. That's that latent heat we were talking about, and it's what cools you down. Cotton is just really good at absorbing sweat, which gives it a bigger surface area to evaporate from, making the whole cooling process way more efficient.
So we'll end with this thought. The solid, stable world that we see and feel around us is actually a frantic, microscopic dance of countless particles, all held together by invisible forces. It really makes you wonder, if everything is just made of particles that are never ever still, what does it even mean for something to be truly solid?